Welcome to the Everyday Awesome Project, where we bring you inspirational stories and game-changing strategies to live your most awesome life. Hey, superstars, welcome back. Polly here.
And Sam Pruitt, what's up, beautiful humans?
Yo, guys, we got an interesting topic. This is something, I think the word, we put this in the subject lines because it was like anxiety is something a lot of people, it's just, kind of, we all get it. We all have it, if you will. And so, but we really want to talk about getting curious to relieve anxiety. Would you say? Yeah?
Well, we've both been having anxiety this week. And we're like, hey, we're both having anxiety about radically different things, of course, because we're living in separate places doing different things. But because we are who we are in the world, we also are curious. So, what we found through our conversation, or our several conversations this week, dealing with some stuff that's just been going on, is because we have been able to work through these things, we found that curiosity as a core value that we both have and share was really a critical piece to moving through the anxiety. And we thought, why not share it with the audience? Because what an amazing tool that we have developed. And many people have it, but many don't. We really want to share it because it's a free tool that anybody can use.
Yeah, yeah, and it's up for grabs, let's say, so I think with all of this, it's like it's a choice, if you will, and as we were talking about, like the roots of anxiety, one of the things that I was thinking is, you've got anxiety, like you feel kind of the systemic feeling in your body, right? Just this anticipation and,
So yucky.
yeah, all those, I call it
Well,
like
what does it feel like for you? Yeah,
well,
explain it.
well, I actually don't ever say that I have anxiety. So just so you know, like I don't like to label myself anxious. I will have moments where I'm unsettled, I'll say. I'm like,
Okay.
oh, so what I was actually noticing last night is people often say like pressure, right? So like they're feeling pressure or something, right? Whether that's a deadline or something that they have to say or do or a phone call or, like they're anxious about something or they've got anxiety about something. And I was noticing that it's funny, just as we're saying this on the air, I was like, oh, I was doing this last night. So I was laying in bed and I was like, I'm feeling that thing that people talk about with the pressure. Like I literally felt it in my body. It felt like out like a bubble, sort of like a squeezing of my body, let's say, like, oh, there's this bubble. And I was like, oh, there's the pressure. Okay, well, what's causing it? And then I have learned, or one of the things I've taught myself, and we'll go into curiosity as a start here, is like if I'm feeling something in my body, it's largely because I'm thinking something in my head. Like that's my go upstairs, check in with the mind is usually it, right? And so I was like, oh, what am I thinking about that could be causing me to feel this way about it? And then I noticed like, oh, I've got this deadline and this might not work out. And what about this? And what about this? And I went, oh, well, there's the pressure. And I was like, well, is any of that true? Or do I need to be, hey, I always love like shifting it. Like, do I need to be thinking about this right now? Like trying to go to bed, not thinking about it. But how about you? What does anxiety feel like for you and your body?
Well, I definitely get anxiety. And I think it's been something I've had off and on my whole life that I can actually remember.
Mhm.
That there are definitely periods pretty regularly for me that anxiety becomes a thing.
Huh.
And it does manifest physically. And it's definitely coming from my thoughts and emotions. So things are going on in the world around me, or with relationships, or with my own thought process. And it starts to turn into a physical expression.
Mm.
If I'm in bed and having it, it's because my mind is racing and I'm not able to go to sleep. And I can feel my heart literally like palpitating and doing weird things. And sometimes that even happens during the day.
Mm.
So that's when I know, hey, I'm getting anxious. I'm feeling anxious. What is going on? Sometimes it's like the physical thing comes up, and then I will pause and be like, ooh, I'm very familiar with this feeling. And
Mhm.
before it runs away from me and
Mhm.
becomes exasperated, I need to pause, do some breathing. Maybe I need to remove myself from a situation if I'm in an
Yeah.
environment
Right.
that is inducing that, and really calm myself down and then start to reflect.
Yeah.
Hey, what am I thinking about right now? Or is my mind racing? What's bringing this up? And is it something that I can redirect or, turn away from, or whatever the thing is. But like what you're saying that we both believe in is, if we didn't get curious, and I've learned that lesson, it can definitely get away from you. And it becomes, now every day I have underlying anxiety, or every time I walk into this job, I feel anxious, or every time I have to call this relative or see this person, I'm anxious. And
Yeah.
I don't want to be operating that way in the world anymore. And I haven't wanted to do that for a long time. So I've worked very hard at it, like you have, for
Right.
that not to become normal. But I wanted to
Yeah.
speak to the fact that, at one point it was normal. And for
Mm.
many people it is. And it doesn't feel good. It
And
doesn't feel good.
I just want to say, you say I get anxious, and I just want to possibly insert, I'm choosing to be anxious because I want us to remember we have the power,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
It's not like, oh, I caught a cold. It's like I got it. Hey, I caught that ball. I got the anxiety ball. It's more like I've created it inside my body from something, and
Yeah.
sometimes people, and this is where people lose their power, is they say, that person made me anxious.
Well,
And it's like,
triggers. We've talked about triggers.
but the
Like there can
trigger
be
lies in
people.
us. It lies
Yeah,
in us.
it does lie in us, but I'm going to push back. Like there will be environments that are maybe similar, or relationships are a really good way. Like there are
Yeah.
certain relationships that some of us have where our history with that person, an experience we had, an exchange, something there is really can be very painful. And maybe we don't even remember what it is. Maybe we do, but there can be something separate. Maybe that person isn't even around, but someone else reminds us of them, or
100%.
something is said, or a circumstance, and we're right back there,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Because we're carrying the trigger around with us. Like we're carrying
inside our
that.
physical body.
Yeah. Yeah. It's stored in our subconscious mind, AKA your body. Right. And
Mhm.
so you come up against, you're the match, and you come up against the sharp edge, and it lights, and you feel it, and you're like,
Yes.
whoosh, a stroke, right? And you're like, whoa, where's all these chemicals and feelings coming from? Because you're carrying that, in the work, some work, we call it namaskar, the wound, the unhealed thought, emotion, trapped energy,
Mhm.
story. Something happened to you that was painful at the time, big T, little t, whatever, or
Yes.
repeated T's can also turn into wounds, that live with us. And then we walk around with that wound, and then we bump up against, the world. But it's not them that's making you that way.
No, it's not them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I get anxiety. It's like, well, I create anxiety because out in the world, I haven't healed something inside myself
Yeah.
that causes it. So yeah, but the curiosity. So one of the things I just wanted to insert as we go forward is, we talked about our philosophy, and get curious is part of it. And I definitely don't think I had this at birth. Oh, sorry, let me say, I
You
think
had curiosity.
we all had, as kids, we all had curiosity, and then I think I conditioned myself out of it. And then I think, like you said, we've come back to it, right? And you and I just underlying I think we're curious about the world, we're curious about ourselves. And one of the things that I've studied and learned from one of my favorite teachers, Abraham Hicks, is like, we deserve to feel good in this body.
Mhm,
We deserve
mhm.
to have a life and a body, and like have well-being. Like that is our gifted natural state. That's a belief that I choose to adopt. Not everybody believes that, whatever. We're all sinners. Some people believe whatever. I'm like, nope, not me. I'm like, I
I'm going to
believe.
pass on signing up for that as well.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, no, well-being is my natural state. And so what you and I are pointing out
Yes.
is, when you notice that you're out of alignment, you're out of that natural state of well-being, whether, one of the things we're talking about is, a lot of this stuff can exist in relationship. It can exist in self-relationship, like you're just nervous in your own mind, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, you're in bed, nobody's, making you anxious except yourself. For food, some foods can trigger, emotions inside of us or experiences, and we don't feel good, right? But we
Mhm,
continue to do those things, right?
mhm.
Or watching things on the news, like we were talking about, right?
Yes.
What are
Yes.
what are we exposing ourselves to? So I have the fundamental belief that I deserve to feel good. And so I'm keenly aware when this body is out of regulation, when it's out of peace, when it's out of feeling good. I go, hold up,
Yeah,
hold up.
exactly.
Right? And you do
Because we
too.
have that core belief that we deserve to feel good and that we should feel good, that we're capable of
Yeah.
feeling good mentally and physically.
Yeah.
And you and I have worked very hard at feeling good mentally and physically. Like we understand that this is work, but at the same time, we're all deserving of that really high quality way of being in the world.
Yeah.
That is where the curiosity comes in.
Mhm.
Because if something doesn't feel good mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, then we go, hmm,
Mhm.
what's going on? I should get curious.
And I think one of the things you were pointing out in your story just a minute ago that I want to go back to is how many years you and I probably lived in areas where we let the suffering in our body, or we ignored the signals from our body, you might say, like something was going on and we're like, don't have time for that, or whatever, and it builds and it creates a pattern and it creates a groove and then a bigger wound or whatever, turns into disease, turns into all kinds of unsettling manifestations. And it's
Mhm.
like, wait a minute, no. And so you and I don't let it get to that point anymore, right? That's where we're wanting
Not
to
anymore.
introduce this to people, is like, get curious sooner. Like, hey, we've been down this road. We know, like, if you're not paying attention to how you feel and you put it on the side, it's like, oh, that doesn't matter, or oh, that issue in my relationship, I can just put it off to the side, or oh yeah, my back hurts today, but I won't go see a doctor, whatever.
Well, I want to interject just one thought around this that I'll say from my own experience, and maybe there's some people listening that have this as well, is maybe a curiosity should start in the place that, is it possible when we say you deserve to feel good, their immediate response is, well, not really.
Mm,
Maybe I'm
mm,
not deserving of feeling good.
mm,
Maybe I
mm.
am deserving of this, whether it's
Yeah,
physically, mentally, or emotionally disrupted feeling.
yeah,
Maybe I deserve that kind of suffering. And
yeah,
that's a whole other conversation that people need to be having with themselves or with a
yeah,
professional,
yeah.
is if that's what comes up for you immediately when we say this, then we need to start there.
That's true.
Yeah, and
That's
I know for
true.
me, it wasn't just ignoring stuff, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will, around,
Mm.
self-abuse and stuff like that.
Kind of worthiness rooted in,
Lack
yeah,
of
like,
worthiness, lack of
yeah,
belonging, and
yeah,
self-abuse. Yeah.
yeah. As you were talking, one of the things I was thinking of is, some of the relationship situations and scenarios I've had recently that you helped me on, and talking with people in my life. And it was interesting, this one person that is, a long history, years and years and years, and you were helping me see, like, oh, well, he just has, kind of your ticket, like, like he knows, he can punch that card and knows that that'll send you over here. And it's so true, right? And fortunately, with the conversation with you, and I hope you have in your life people, or you can work with a coach, that you have someone in your life that can go, hold up, wait a minute, what is, but I got curious about it. And what I was able to do, I think, some of this work with, you've probably heard that book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Stephen
Mhm.
Covey is like, seek first to understand the other person. So I got curious, like, wow, what's going on here? So I was really looking at the dynamic between me and, why was I feeling so bad in this scenario? And God, I felt so much loathing and shame. Oh gosh. And then I just like stepped back. I got
Mhm.
curious, what's going on over there for that person? What's going on over here? I was in the
Yes.
beginning taking on a lot of responsibility for what had happened, right? And that's
Yes.
been my MO in this particular dynamic, is like, I take full, I do like to take responsibility for how my life goes and the things that I create. But I'm like, wait a minute, I'm taking on responsibility for something that I also did not create. And is on him, if you will. But I had to get up to that higher perspective, get curious about what's going on for him and over there. And then I was like, huh, and why am I feeling disempowered, right? And I
Mhm.
was creating
Mhm.
it for myself, and I flipped that, but like you said,
Exactly. And I think these things happen to us all day long if we let them,
yeah,
right? Because we're in relationship with others, we're in community with others, work professionally, family, etc. We have a lot of exposure to inbound news or politics or things happening in the world or in the environment, etc., even in our towns or in our homes. And as humans, it's hard not to be responding and taking on that energy of the other. whether it is coming through the media channel or somebody that you love, right?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to have space and
Yeah.
boundary around that.
Yeah.
Where do they stop and where do I begin?
Yeah.
What is theirs and what is mine? And so if you don't have the curiosity around that, it's going to be very difficult in an unexamined way of being in the world to not just allow that to just completely fold you over,
Yeah.
because all day long there's an intensity out there. I mean, there really is. There's a lot going on,
Yeah.
but it doesn't belong to us.
Right.
What's happening in the news and politics don't belong to me. I don't work in politics. Like I have no need to really even,
Yeah.
engage with that kind of media.
Right.
And even in family units,
Yeah.
I have a partner, I have children, I have grandchildren. I mean, I have, so there's a lot going on with all of those people. I care deeply about all of them, but what is happening with them is their journey. I
Mm.
can only be and hold space for them to have their journey.
Mhm.
I can't take on their journey and make it mine.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's very challenging. And that requires a lot of curiosity and a lot of
Mm.
boundaries and techniques and tools that I've learned over the years of really allowing myself to have space so
Yeah.
I can see more clearly
Yeah.
about what is theirs and what is mine, and how can I be curious with them. In some
Mhm.
instances, I shared some stories with you earlier about my brother has an illness currently, and I'm dialoguing with him quite a bit, and I want to create space and be there for him, but also making sure that he has his own experience. And I'm very
Mm.
like, I can't change that for him. I
Mhm.
can't I can't come in and believe me, I wish I could fix that, right?
Yeah.
Or with a child, I wish I could. I don't want
Yeah.
my children and grandchildren to suffer, but I see
Yeah.
them having challenges and suffering. How can you hold space for those people and help them get curious and
Mhm.
maybe be there as part of a conversation, holding a space without taking on that emotional load? It's tricky.
Well, and I think it would be helpful because I love how you're giving the general example. Would you be willing to give the story that you were sharing with me before we went on air about, how you interrupted the pattern that you noticed in the conversation with your brother? Could you walk us through, like, I
Mhm.
mean, you don't have to maybe say exactly what he said or you said, but like,
Yeah.
because I think this is, I mean, so and as soon as you told me the story, I was like, well, that's what Tony Robbins says. Those are interventions, like, because the mind gets in a groove, creates a pattern, it goes round and round. And you
Okay.
just went, hold up,
Yeah.
like, hold up, wait a minute, what about this? And then, it literally from my work with eating disorders and hypnosis and stuff, this loop, these habit loops, because we literally do our emotions. So if you have this loop of emotions that, oh, so and so says this, I always feel bad, or whatever,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
To interrupt that and to not keep going down that road, that well-carved path in your brain,
Mm.
so tell me tell us, give me an example. How did it go?
Okay. Yeah. And this speaks to getting curious, which
Yeah.
is really what we're saying today. It's like, what are some ways you can get curious? So
Yeah.
you're having a conversation. In this instance, I was having a conversation with my brother who is in treatment
Mm.
for cancer, and it's incredibly painful and it's a very harsh treatment. And so, in this particular dialogue, you know, he's sharing with me the amount of pain and the amount of discomfort and the amount of really unknown and fear that lies in that experience. And I feel, of course, great compassion for that, but I wanted to open up an opportunity to change his emotional experience, since I couldn't change his physical experience at that time, right? To maybe think about something different. So interrupting the pattern of that loop around where the conversation was going, kind of in circles around the pain, the experience, what was it feeling like, all of that angst. I interjected a thought, which is probably seemed a little bit bizarre and extreme at the moment, but it wasn't. I'm still talking about the human body. So I just asked, do you know how long it takes for that part of your body to regenerate itself? The body does regenerate itself on a cellular level all the time, every day, all day long. Your muscles, your bones, your
Your
tendons, your
eyelashes, yeah.
brain, your brain,
Your
every
skin.
organ in your body. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. And if you don't know about that science, you should learn it, because it will really
Yeah.
fascinate you and teach you a lot about your body. So I asked specifically about that particular organ, and did he know how long it would take to regenerate? And it was just like, boom,
Pause.
complete mind shift of what? We're talking about that now? We're thinking about that? That's weird, but that's really powerful.
Yeah.
That's incredibly empowering for me to think that I'll go through this treatment, I'll come out the other side, but this organ will be able to regenerate itself. And then what will life look like then? How
Hope.
will we feed exactly that process? How do we take power back and generate hope around that, and an action plan around that? And then once that happens, what are all the cool things we're going to be doing?
Right.
Right? What's all the fun that is waiting
Yeah.
around the corner next? So speaking about your process with Tony Robbins, he calls that what?
Well,
And
interventions. Yeah,
intervention.
interventions, right? Yeah. And so, and I would say in therapy, and that's like a term, he does them so powerfully, in the room and in the stage, I mean, literally suicide interventions. Like he says, who in here
Yeah.
came and they wanted to kill themselves and still want to? And he'll have probably, depending on the size of the room, no less than 10 to 20 people stand up. And he will talk with that person and process, whatever. And that person, has a changed life. Right. But, and like your brother, so you said something that I wanted to kind of touch upon, and that's like, you couldn't help him feel differently, or you couldn't help him physically, but you could help him feel differently. And I want to like vote for, actually, I think feeling differently can help you also physically feel differently, right? So like,
It can as a not a side effect, but the next step in
yeah,
the process. First, you have to change this,
yeah,
and then that changes.
yeah,
So I guess I didn't mean I can't fix that, but I could
right,
come in from
right.
this other side. I call them course corrects.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think about, it's not coming to me the exact scenario, but it's something along the line. So like if you, it's kind of like if you're standing, I was trying to think of like a sports analogy, but it's like if you're standing at the 25-mile, glass half full, glass half empty is what I'm trying to get at here. It's like you're standing at, and you think like, oh, I'm only halfway there to the race, right? And you got 50 miles, or you're like, I've only got 25 miles to go, right?
Mhm.
Like depending on like your experience of that is like, yes, right? Or some people, like I know you, and
Perspective.
I've done this, like, oh, if I could just get to that stop sign, I'm just going to run to that next stop sign, right? Like, whoo, right? And then I'll see how I feel there, and then I'll see how I feel there, right? And it's the mental shift in perspective that, like, I love this story because it beams with hope. And I think one of the things that curiosity, like children and curiosity, is wonderment.
Mhm.
And I think if we can stay more in a space of open-minded wonderment, and I love the word possibility there, then the
Mhm.
mind is not shut down to only what it knows. It is open to unlimited, right? And something we talked about off air is how I used to turn the word worry into wonder with my students. It was like, yeah, you could, what's wrong is always available. I'm worried about X, right? You can
Mhm.
give energy to the outcome you don't want to have happen. That's all you're doing with worries. I'm giving energy to the thing I don't want to have happen. And you can also stay curious and like, I wonder what could happen here. I wonder you can lace that with even more curious words. Like, I wonder what's the best thing that could happen here. I wonder what I'll get to play with it. You and I were talking about like, some people in our life right now are going through some, or they make their life harder, let's say, not, they're making their life harder. And we're like, we're just going to be over here on this mountain with butterflies and curious and right.
Totally, totally. Well, if you think about things that cause anxiety, right? A lot of times people worry about things they have no control over. So if you're worrying about something you actually can't control, I mean, you say it out loud, it sounds ludicrous,
Yeah.
by the way, right?
Mm.
But a way to take back your power would be to, well, what can I affect? What do I have control over?
Yes.
Maybe I should make that list.
Mm,
Maybe I should focus on those things. So like if it's a training, for example, and I'm training for this big crazy race and I'm going to do this thing, should I just be sitting around every day going, oh my God, what's going to happen on race day? Even though it's months and months away, should I just be, what's going to happen?
yeah.
And just worry, worry, worry? Or should I get busy doing the work
Yeah.
towards things I can affect and impact? How can I
Yes.
navigate this? What do I have control over? What are the things I can do? How can I work on my mindset? How can I work on my physical fitness?
Mhm.
How can I work on my gear? How can I work on my nutrition? Blah, blah, blah. There's so many things you can control and
Mm,
put my energy into that.
mm,
And of course, that's going to be the more empowered position to be in. And that's going
mm.
to take the anxiety I might otherwise have and diminish it,
Mhm, mhm.
right?
You know, and it's one of the things I was picturing as you were saying that is sort of like inside your body, you have a dial, right?
Mm.
And so, or a meter, let's call it, like we started to say in the beginning of this, like, oh, I deserve to feel good, right? And when we feel off or we feel out of alignment, we feel resistance, negative, worry, anxiety, whatever, we've turned that meter down, right? And so getting curious, asking questions like, could I take this step? You know, it's like you start to feel the release in your body. So I would say the steps, whatever it is for you, because there's no like, oh, here's the prescription for getting out of anxiety. Here, you know, it always works. Like this is the one thing, one and done, take this pill, you know, never have to worry about anxiety again. No, it's like in that moment, I would say it's noticing the dial when you're turning the dial in the direction of feeling better,
Mhm.
follow that. Right. So
Mhm.
it's like, so does sitting around and being concerned about what's going to happen on race day, how does that make you feel? Like, okay,
Yeah.
would you like to go, you know, study some nutrition things? Oh yeah, that feels better. Okay. Or would you like to, you know, meet with a coach and practice your swim technique? Oh yeah, I would like, I really need to do that, you know, or, you know, and so it's feeling for those curious things inside of you. Like the curiosity comes and the answer is inside of you as to what the next step is or what the best outcome or what you're supposed to do because you're curious inside yourself. Like, I wonder how I'm supposed to feel better in this scenario. Not there's one and done,
Mhm.
but what's going to get me out of this? Right.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about health things. We were talking about thyroid earlier, unrelated to this topic. But what came up for me when you were talking is, so if you know your thyroid isn't working very well, wouldn't you go learn about the thyroid?
Hmm.
And then wouldn't you go learn about all the other things that impact thyroid health? Right? So you would start to get curious around maybe a blood test or maybe some other kind of medical exam or something that, even if my foot isn't okay, like I'm training right now at a pretty high level. So there are parts of my body that are like, excuse me, what are we doing? What's going on today? What is she gonna do next? Like, so I could just be, well, my foot hurts, but I'm gonna pretend it doesn't and go
Right.
on about grinding out the miles, which ultimately is going to lead to not only pain, discomfort, but anxiety around, what if I have an injury? What if this derails my training? What if this happens on race day? Blah, blah, blah. Instead, I'm not going to do those things because that would absolutely take me into a tailspin of
Mm,
misery and anxiety. But I'm
mm,
going to say, let me go check out what's going on with my foot. I'm going to dig in there. I'm going to start working on it. Maybe I'll get someone to look at it. I'm going to do a little bit of homework around, how does the
mhm.
foot function and what are some common running or
Yeah.
cycling foot issues? And, I'm going to go down this crazy train of curiosity.
Yeah.
And you and I are also hilarious. We read a lot, we listen to podcasts. We are curious so much about the world, and in particular our bodies and brains and how they work within
Mhm,
ourselves and within other humans, that
mhm,
there's so much information and so many
mhm.
resources out there. To me, it's fun.
Yeah.
Like, that curiosity has created a very different lifestyle for me that's incredibly rewarding and fun. Every day I take some kind of information in. I know I share a lot of it with you, like, check this new podcast out, check this. But I feel like I need to send it to everybody who's listening. If you're on the journey of learning about yourself,
Yeah.
there's so much joy there. So
Yeah.
curiosity leads to joy.
Yeah.
Why is that? Is it because, we're all kids at heart? What do you think? Why is it so
Mm.
fun to be curious?
Well, you know, I think as I was talking about that dial, it's like curious brings answers, it brings inner knowing, it allows us to know ourselves better. It
Mm,
allows us to, I mean, I fundamentally think we're here to evolve. And so I think the way we're set up and built as these humans is to evolve from birth to the end. And so curiosity, I think, is one of those baked in experiences that we have to create that evolution of the human soul, you know? So I think it feels good because it's kind of like, why is the thing that makes babies and perpetuates the species feel so good? Because I think perpetuating the species is what one of the things that is supposed to happen, right? If sex and intercourse didn't feel good to people, they'd be like, yeah, maybe not going to do this because look at all these lives of, all these years of that's a lot of responsibility, but anyway, so I think, curiosity is a sign from the universe or something like, hey, this has something for you. This is what you're made for, right? And one of the things I was thinking as you were sharing what you were sharing is we talked about in relationships. I gave that example of my relationship recently where, kind of had this like blame game going on and kind of bumping up against heads. And I stepped back and I was curious in the relationship, right? I was curious about the other person. I was curious curious what my role was, curious what his role was. And I go about the world and, I told you, and maybe I'll share this story about my dad. Maybe I'll share that story. So, and this is probably the first time I noticed myself ever doing this. And now I do it other times. I don't have a lot of relationship dynamics like this that I interact with very often where I'm committed to being in a relationship with that person. And I know there's going to be strife because usually I'm like, we got strife. We don't have much of a relationship. I'm like, I want to hang out with people that I get along with. But anyway, so in this one case, so with my dad, this is towards the end of his life. I had him living with me and we hadn't lived together for a long time, but, love my dad. And so had him living with me, moved into a house. And I said, hey, Dad, don't let the cats out because there could be coyotes in this particular area. I'm concerned, let's leave him in the house for a while. We just moved here. Let's do that. And that and a couple other little like house cleaning things, like he'd leave, breadcrumbs on the countertop after he made a sandwich, little whatever, dishes in the sink. But then the cat thing, I'd find myself yelling at him. Like it freaked me out that my cats could die. And I would come to him and I'd be like, what are you doing? Why the hell? Like, do you not, kind of thing. And then I step back and I'm like, I'd go in my room and I'm all, oh my God, I feel like I'm my dad's mom. Why am I yelling at my dad? I feel like his mom. And I went, wow, that's interesting. I was like, what's going on there? And I went, and so I processed that and I thought about it and I was like, you know what? My dad grew up in a childhood where he was yelled at a lot. He had a very yucky disciplinarian upbringing from what I heard. And I was like, you know what? That's what he knew. That's what he knew was he was a bad child. He was a bad boy, right? And so what helped me, and this may or may not be true, not here to ask him, but I just started to understand my dad still thinks he's a bad child. My dad's still walking around like he's a bad boy and he's making mistakes and he's doing things wrong. So he's going to like create those situations, right?
Yes.
So I understood him better in that moment. And so when he would do things that seemingly seemed like, why are you doing this? I went, oh, he's being a bad child. Okay. And I didn't trigger me. I didn't lose my shit. I didn't yell at him. I was like, I felt better just understanding him, right? Didn't mean it was right. I wasn't always appreciating it, but I was like, and it actually started to dwindle. I would just say the things that he started to do, because I wouldn't come at him like this. He couldn't get that arousal out of me. It wasn't there. So anyway.
Well, we make up these stories, right? When we're out and about in the world. And that's all of us, by the way.
Often, yeah, every day.
All out and about in the world. And if you think about it, it's sort of remarkable. We're out and about in the world. Okay. All of us are sharing this world at this moment, at this time, on this planet, in this, it's just bizarre. Okay. And so here we are, we're bumping into each other all day long, all day long. And yet when we come into this shared moment, we come from vastly different experiences. We were born in different places at different times. We're different ages. We have this entire DNA, genetic
code.
I mean, it's just so bizarre. And then we think not only our genes, everything's so different there, but our entire life's journey up until that moment. I'm 55. I bring everything with me to this conversation. All 55 years of shitstorms and whatever. And then we have a moment together, a conversation, whatever. And we think for some reason, when that happens and it doesn't go well, we make up these stories about the other and about ourselves in that moment. because we're trying to understand and navigate gracefully. Some of us are doing a much better job than others, by the way, at this. Navigate gracefully through these exchanges, altercations, miscommunications, all of this stuff,
Yeah.
But it's sort of hilarious if you think okay, how can I not just pause for a moment and get curious rather than leap into a story, get upset, start yelling, or worse, walk away and have a story that follows us into the rest of our life, right? Taking that experience negatively on physically and emotionally and then walking away, it becomes a wound, a small T trauma or whatever. There is no way any of us can possibly understand each other very well. Even my spouse after 26 years, okay? I'm telling you, half the time I go, well, who in the hell is that? And what is he talking about? And I shared an experience with you where this week that something was going on and he said something, and I was like, what the? I know who you are right now. What did you say? And my immediate response was it was a political thing, and I was like, no, I was going to get all crazy. And then I was like, okay, let me just take a breath and then understand. And can you explain? And then I just misinterpreted what was said. But because there's so much political chaos happening right now, we're all like fired up about everything. Yeah. And I was like, oh, get a grip. I was talking to myself, get a grip, but it was good for us to be able to have a conversation and then realize that that's not what he meant to say. That's not what I heard. Like all of the things weren't even true. And you can laugh about it in hindsight.
Yeah.
But if I wasn't curious, a curious person, I wouldn't have gone back to ask, hey, you said this thing and it made me kind of cray-cray. So I'm coming back to have a
And that's where I was going to
conversation.
point out is like people shut down, they blame,
they shut down.
they shut down. Oh, he's wrong. What are they talking about? They make wrong the other person instantly. That opinion does not match
Or
mine.
they're instantly wounded.
Well, they're that. Yeah. So they put the freaking, put the walls up. That person is wrong. They should be punished, whatever, like they just and create, and depending on if it's in a close relationship, the space of resentment starts to build because they just hold on to it or whatever. And it's like, oh, what if I just spend a moment and go, well, I wonder why you said that. At first you were like, hold on, wait a minute. I know you don't think that, but then it was, you had a misunderstanding of what he was saying or, so.
I had a curiosity. Where did that crazy sentence come from? Did that come from your brain and mouth?
Do you really think that? Wait a minute. What? How did you put those thoughts together? No doubt. So
yeah. So it boils down to getting curious and being curious about yourself, about others, and then ultimately about the world that we live in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a very complex. And I think if you really take time, make time for being curious, and you nurture that as a trait, it's a core value of ours. But if you nurture it as a trait within you, it eventually will become a core value. It'll be how you operate in the world. You were telling me about a story showing up at a job site this week on a project you're managing. And here's contractors flying around, and this whole house is getting remodeled, and there's all these different people running around doing things. And you have this way of being in a space like that, especially as a project manager. There's all these different personalities and all these different tasks and timelines and money and things of showing up curious. Working with each of the individuals. You want to share that experience?
Well, as you were saying that, so maybe I'll tell that story, but as you were saying that, I was like, curious and open.
Yeah.
Because it's like, when I started to like recognize in relationship how we close, we close off our heart, right? We want to protect.
We think we're protecting ourselves.
We think we're protecting ourselves, which is actually the opposite. But yeah, you got to go through a lot of therapy to get that. But hopefully you got that. But yeah. So it's this openness of the heart that you and I like. The world's not out to get us.
No.
Other people aren't misbehaving. I just don't understand all the time. If I can have an open-hearted conversation with them and understand, I won't necessarily always agree. We can just understand each other. It's about me staying open, me staying curious about myself or possibility. We talked to some things about, what about in religion, or what about our bodies or whatever, just having an openness to staying open. Like, having an openness to possibility, to curiosity, to childlike wonderment, to yes in the world instead of no, you, wrong, the other, that kind of thing. So on the job site, so I was working with someone who was I was taking over from that person being project manager, and I was going to be project manager. And I guess their MO, I hadn't really seen how they operate in the world, but I do know a little bit that this person tends to kind of sling a hard stick, let's say, and so we show up because we're doing the transition. This is the first meeting with this contractor, and that person was the previous contact. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to be the new contact. And I was like, cool. They like, and this person, I'll just say it was a story about gutters, right? So this guy shows up at the job site, and I knew just from talking to him a little bit on the phone before, I'm like, this guy knows what he's talking about. I'm like, can't wait to see what we're doing. Gutters, have fun. Look, what are we going to do here? I was like,
Gutters, wee.
hey, what you got for us? Because this is actually a pretty interesting project. It's an old Victorian home. So it's not just a square box. It's like, where are we going to put the gutters on this one? I wonder what's going to happen here. Right. And so I just went like, hey, you're kind of the expert. I'm here to, share anything that I have or whatever. And after we walked around with this guy, and it was a very pleasant experience. And I was like, yeah, send us your bid and let's keep going and have the conversation. And she's like, wow, you're so like nice to the contractors. And I was like, I don't have any reason not to be nice to these people. It's like, unless somebody is out to get you, which I just don't believe in the world, most people are that way. Sure, there are some, and you've got to find your own inner compass to navigate when you are facing that kind of a person. But I go through the world like people are good. And
Exactly. Another core value.
yeah, yeah.
Another core value. If at your core, one of your values is everyone's out to get me, and the world is evil. First of all, turn the news off right now. Just please do yourself a favor, turn the news off, because that's what they want you to believe.
Right.
Right. And even most of mainstream movies and TV shows is everybody's getting killed and robbed and all the things are happening.
Yeah. So fear. News is just feeding. Like if you want a fear sandwich, go listen to some, mainstream media news. And because, and I don't choose to live that way. I live in a world, Einstein said, the fundamental question is, do you believe that the universe is benevolent? Or basically, and not his words, but is it out to get you? Like, do you believe that the universe is good, or do you live in one that's not so good? And if you answer that question one way or the other, open, not open, right, you're going to have a very different experience of life, right?
Well, we have to double click on something for a minute that people maybe have not given thought to, even though we preach things around this theme quite often, is what you are exposed to on the daily. What is going into your ears, podcasts, music, radio, whatever.
People you hang around with.
TV, people you hang around with at the water cooler or in your household or whatever. If that coming into you is that fear-based, everything is dangerous, criminal, this or that or whatever, please do not think for a second that that will not impact who you are in the world. And if that's who you want to be in the world, by all means, stay tuned into that channel.
Yeah.
That's who you will be. That's what your life will become. If you don't want to be that person, you need to turn it off and say goodbye to that.
Yeah. And anybody listening to the Everyday Awesome Project, I have a feeling if they clicked on this, they know better. They know what's good for them. Maybe we don't always, sometimes people dip into it, but if you're tuning into Everyday Awesome Project, you are in for good juju in your own body and in your own life. And I'm hope from the way that we tell our stories and the message that we seek to most with our truth share is like awesome all the way. Like people are good, you're good. Just want to give you a big old hug. Like all is well. There's nothing bad going on here, right? Like stay curious, like childlike. Open. Okay, let's give them the bottom line. What's the? I'm sort of giving the one thing, but what's the one thing?
The one thing. I mean, for me, the one thing is definitely be curious, because that's where joy is at. And I believe that joy is there because connection is there. So for me, the curiosity is joyful, and I feel that joy because I feel more connected to myself and others.
Mm,
through that curiosity. So
well
that's what it is
said.
for me.
Well said. Well said. So we hope that you listening to this are taking away, a question for yourself. What is something you could ask yourself on the daily, or, like mine is one of mine when I see resistance, or I'm like, oh, this shouldn't happen, like something unexpected. I'm like, I wonder what's trying to happen here. You've heard me say that before, like, I wonder. So can you use a word like, I wonder, or can you use like, oh, I want to remember to stay curious, or if I could be more childlike, or if I could be more open, or what else is possible, right? Or Byron Katie, is that true, right? Whatever words you want to choose, we hope you'll take something away with this. You've got some notes and nuggets for yourself that something can impact your life. So that openness to the world, that lack of resistance, like, hey world, let's talk, let's hang out. I'm open to you. You can stay in that position. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to say, if they're experiencing anxiety or feeling anxious about something, that by being curious and having a conversation with the other, or with somebody like a coach, or we have a relationship where we can talk to each other, hopefully they have someone like that. um, Having a conversation to open up the curiosity and exchange will help them explore deeper. And if that's not available, then maybe writing it down.
Mhm.
Why do I feel this way? First of all, what does it feel like in the
Yeah.
physical body, emotional body? Why could I be feeling this way? And
Mhm.
how can I maybe ask myself questions,
Mhm.
probing, or someone can probe for you, so
Mhm.
you can uncover that there's another way.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Very good.
Okay.
All right, my dear. Well,
All right.
this was very curious and fun. So what do we want
Wasn't
to leave them with? Our always phrases to remember.
well.
I feel like we haven't said it all in this episode a few
I
times,
feel
it
like
seems
they should be
like.
saying it to us by now.
Okay. Shall we listen? Do you hear it? Can you hear it?
How your life, how your life feels is
Feels.
more important than how it looks,
Looks.
right?
And every day is your opportunity to find your awesome.